Humanity has landed rovers on Mars and mapped galaxies billions of light years away, but less than 5% of the deep ocean has actually been explored so far. We know more about the surface of the moon than about what lies 2,000 meters beneath the water. Down there, 44 creatures broke almost every rule that biology thought was universal. The deeper you go, the weirder it gets. You probably don't even know one of them. At least, not in the way we're going to show you here. So, welcome to another video from the History in Focus channel. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss more videos like this one. Now let's get into the video.
Number 1. The deep sea anglerfish. The female has a rod growing out of her forehead with a glowing bulb on the tip, packed with bacteria that produce light. She dangles it in front of her mouth and waits, perfectly still, sometimes for weeks on end. Her teeth are thin and curved like needles, and her stomach stretches to swallow prey larger than herself. All of that is the known part, the part that shows up in movies. The part nobody can quite process is what happens to the male of the species. The male is born tiny, often a fraction of the female's size, with no lure, no hunting teeth, and almost no working digestive system. He has enormous nostrils and big eyes. That is all he has. His only task in life is to find a female in the middle of thousands of cubic miles of black water, guided by a chemical scent. He does not eat because he has nothing to eat with. If he never finds anyone, he starves to death in the dark without ever serving any purpose. If he does find one, he bites. He latches onto the female's belly with jaws modified into hooks and never lets go. Not when she swims, not when she hunts, not when another animal takes a lunge at her. And that is when the strange part begins. His skin fuses with her skin. The blood vessels connect one by one, and the two circulatory systems become a single system. From that moment on, he is fed by her blood and never has to do anything on his own again. He falls apart. His eyes degenerate and vanish, his fins disappear, his internal organs are absorbed one by one until almost nothing is left. In the end, all that remains is a sac of sperm hanging off the female, fed by her blood, available for whenever she wants to fertilize. A single female can carry several fused males at the same time. Her immune system should reject that foreign tissue, and it does not. And to this day, nobody has explained how that is possible. Number 2. The giant phantom jelly. The first specimen was caught in 1899 and weighed about 90 pounds. Nobody quite understood what it was, and it was not until 1959, 60 years later, that science recognized it as its own species. Its bell is more than 3 feet across and dark red. Hanging from it are 4 ribbon-shaped arms that reach about 33 feet, the length of a bus. It has no stinging tentacles. It wraps prey in its arms and carries it inside, in no hurry at all. In more than a century of exploration, it has been seen only about 120 times worldwide. The robots at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute have made thousands of dives into total darkness and only found it 9 times. It is not that it is rare. It shows up in every ocean basin on the planet, from around 260 feet down to nearly 4.5 miles. The problem is the size of the place. One of the largest invertebrate predators in the ocean is practically invisible, simply because the ocean is too vast to search all the way through. Number 3. The Magnapina squid. It has a short body with 2 large oval fins and 10 extremely thin appendages that hang down at a right angle, as if each one had an elbow in the middle. The largest specimen ever recorded was about 21 feet long, 20 feet of which was arm alone. That is 20 times the length of the body. It hangs in the water with its arms spread wide in a position nobody can explain. The genus was described in 1998 from captured juveniles. There are only about a dozen confirmed sightings in the entire world, almost all of them made by robots from oil platforms and by scientific expeditions that were not looking for it. In September of 2024, a bottom camera filmed one in the Tonga Trench at nearly 11,000 feet deep. It is the only known squid that lives below about 20,000 feet, which makes it the deepest squid on the planet. Not a single adult has ever been captured whole, anywhere. Number 4. The Colossal squid. It reaches about 23 feet and 1,100 pounds, which makes it the heaviest invertebrate on the planet. It lives in the Southern Ocean and belongs to the family of glass squids. Almost everything science knows about it came from inside the bellies of sperm whales and seabirds, or from dying specimens hauled up by fishermen. It was identified and named in 1925. 100 years passed before anyone managed to see one alive in the place where it lives without it dying. Its eyes reach nearly 11 inches across, the largest in the animal kingdom of any species alive or extinct. In the darkness of the Antarctic, they work like light collectors, capable of detecting the faint glow a sperm whale gives off as it moves through the water. In the middle of each of its 8 arms, it has rotating hooks, and it is that detail that sets it apart from any other squid. Circular marks from those hooks have been found on the skin of adult sperm whales. On March 9th, 2025, the robot Sebastian dove to about 2,000 feet near the South Sandwich Islands and filmed a living colossal squid for the first time in history, exactly 100 years after the species was named. It was about a foot long. It was a transparent juvenile the size of a foot, drifting in the dark. The team was not even looking for it. A century of searching for a 23-foot monster ended with a baby made of glass that had no idea we existed. Number 5. The Graneladone octopus. In May of 2007, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute found a female clinging to a rock wall about 4,600 feet down in the Monterey Canyon. She had just laid between 155 and 165 eggs and was holding her arms curled over them. On the dive the month before, she had not been there. A round scar on the membrane between 2 of her arms made it possible to identify her. The scientists noted her position and decided to come back every so often to see how it turned out. She was still there. And she stayed there, dive after dive, year after year. The scar always the same, the eggs always growing, which proved it was the same clutch and the same female the whole time. In September of 2011, she was still clinging to the rock. In October, she was gone and the wall was covered in empty egg cases. It had been 53 months, 4.5 years guarding eggs on the same rock. The longest period of parental care ever recorded in any animal. In 53 months of observation, nobody ever saw her eat. She refused food that was offered to her, shrank, lost her color, and slowly turned translucent. Octopuses reproduce only once and then die, and most shallow water species guard their eggs for 1 to 3 months. She did it for 4.5 years in the cold and the dark without feeding, and died when the young hatched. The hatchlings of Graneladone pacifica are born larger and more developed than those of any other known octopus. Number 6. The hagfish. It has no jaw, no scales, no bones, and no way to fight back. When a shark closes its mouth around it, the water inside that mouth turns into a suffocating mass in a fraction of a second. Its glands release threads of protein that expand into gallons of slime the instant they touch seawater. The predator's gills clog, it convulses trying to clear them, and it lets go of everything. In 2011, Vincent Zinsen filmed 14 attacks in New Zealand. Not one of them worked. There is one obvious problem left: how it keeps from drowning in its own slime. The solution is grotesque. It ties its own body into a knot, a simple overhand knot, and slides the knot from its head to its tail, scraping the slime off in a single pass. It uses the same trick to tear flesh off a carcass, since it has no jaw to bite with. It ties the knot, braces against itself, and pulls. There are about 87 species of them doing this on the seafloor, and they have been doing it for more than 300 million years. Number 7. The dragonfish. It is about 6 inches long, with transparent teeth and a barbel hanging from its chin with a glowing organ on the tip. Almost every creature in the deep sea produces blue light, because blue is the wavelength that travels through water, and almost every creature in the deep sea can see only blue. The dragonfish does it differently. It has an organ under its eye that produces red light. At the depth where it lives, red is a color that does not exist. The result is a private spotlight. It switches on the red light, illuminates its prey, and the prey sees nothing because it has no receptor for that color. The dragonfish sees. Its retina has been adapted to detect exactly the wavelength it emits itself. It is as if the animal invented its own radio frequency and was the only device tuned to it. No predator can trace the light back to it. No prey can see what lit it up before the strike. There's a second layer to this. The skin of several dragonfish species is ultra-black, absorbing so much light that it reflects less than half of 1% of what hits it. When a submarine's spotlight points straight at it, the animal stays almost invisible. It is at once the only creature that can see a color and the hardest one to see. It hunts with a flashlight nobody can see, inside a body that barely exists visually. It is the tightest combination of advantages in the ocean. Number 8. The vampire squid. It is not a squid. It is not an octopus either. It is the only living animal in its own order, a branch that split off from everyone else a very long time ago and left no living relatives behind. It has 8 arms, joined by a black membrane that it turns inside out over its head when startled, exposing soft spines that hurt nobody. Its scientific name translates to vampire squid from hell, and for decades, everyone assumed it was a predator. It does not hunt. It extends 2 long, sticky filaments and collects marine snow, the dust of dead plankton and debris that drifts down from the surface. It gathers it all into a ball of mucus and eats it slowly. It is the only known cephalopod that lives on detritus. It inhabits a zone where oxygen is nearly non-existent, and its blood carries a pigment with the highest oxygen affinity ever measured in any cephalopod. The creature with the vampire name survives on crumbs. Number 9. The Yeti crab. In 2005, an expedition found a white, blind crustacean near a hydrothermal vent in the South Pacific, about 7,200 feet down. Its arms and claws were covered in dense, pale hairs. The animal looked so much like the abominable snowman that the nickname stuck immediately. It was a new species, a new genus, and a new family all at once. They named the genus Kiwa, after the Polynesian goddess of shellfish. Nobody knew what the hairs were for. The answer came the following year, in Costa Rica. Andrew Thurber found a second species near a methane seep, and it was waving its claws rhythmically through the water in a movement that looked like dancing. He filmed it for hours without understanding what he was seeing. The crab would spread its arms, wave them, pull them back, and repeat over and over. It was not showing off, it was not defending itself, and it was not hunting anything. The blind creature, at about a mile down, was working. The hairs are a farm. Chemosynthetic bacteria grow on them, and the waving brings fresh oxygen and nutrients to the colony, the same way a farmer irrigates a crop. Then the crab runs its claws through a comb-shaped mouthpart and scrapes its own food straight off its own arm. It plants, it tends, and it harvests. A blind crustacean, more than a mile deep, invented agriculture before anything with a brain did it on the surface. Number 10. The Appalia siphonophore. It looks like a long thread of gelatin drifting in the dark, hundreds of feet down. Except it is not one animal. It is a colony of thousands of genetically identical clones called zooids, strung along a single chain. Each zooid has a function and cannot survive on its own. Some only swim, some only eat, some only sting, some only reproduce. And they always organize themselves in the same order, like beads on a necklace strung by someone. In April of 2020, the robot Sebastian filmed an Appalia in the Ningaloo Canyons off Australia, coiled into a hunting spiral that the team itself thought looked like a flying saucer settled in the water. They estimated the outer ring at about 150 feet, longer than a blue whale, and the whole creature at more than 390 feet. It is the longest organism ever recorded on the planet, and it was fishing with a curtain of stinging tentacles stretched out in the water. The detail that jams your mind is the coordination. The creature has no brain, it has no command center, no central ganglion, nothing to decide for it. Not one of the thousands of parts that make it up knows it is part of anything larger. And even so, the whole thing swims together, hunts together, and coils into a perfect spiral about 2,000 feet down. It is an animal that functions without there being anywhere inside it, anyone paying attention to what is happening. Number 11. The barreleye. It hangs motionless between about 2,000 and 2,600 feet, barely moving, using its large fins only to hold position. Its head is a transparent dome full of fluid, and you can see the two eyes inside it, tubular, with glowing green lenses. The two dark spots that look like eyes on the front of its face are actually nostrils. The real eyes are in there, pointed straight up, searching for shadows against the faint light from the surface. The species was described in 1939, and for almost 70 years biologists thought those eyes were fixed, locked into a tunnel of vision pointed upward. The problem is that no fish can eat while looking only up. In 2008, Bruce Robison and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute filmed a live one off the California coast and solved the case. The eyes rotate inside the dome. It locates its prey by looking up, then rolls its eyes forward to snap it up. That leaves the question of what the dome is for. The leading hypothesis is that it is a shield. The barreleye prowls around siphonophores and steals food caught in their stinging tentacles, and the transparent, fluid-filled dome protects its eyes from the sting. Every specimen collected before 2008 arrived destroyed in the nets, with the dome ruptured. For 69 years, science studied a fish without realizing it had been looking the whole time at a corpse with its head blown open. Number 12. The fangtooth. The adult is about 6 inches long, the size of an open hand, and it carries the largest teeth in the ocean in proportion to its body of any known fish. The two fangs of the lower jaw are so long that if the mouth closed normally, they would pass straight through its own skull from bottom to top. Evolution's solution was anatomical and uncomfortable. There are 2 sheaths in the roof of the mouth, one on either side of the brain, where the fangs slot in. Its teeth do not cut and do not chew anything. They serve only to hook and hold, and it swallows prey whole, like a snake. Its eyes are small and its vision is poor, so it locates everything through its lateral line, detecting vibration in the water around it. It normally lives between about 1,600 and 6,500 feet, and has been found as deep as 16,000. Every night, it rises hundreds of feet to feed and then goes back down. It looks like a giant monster only because nobody puts a scale in the photo. Number 13, the goblin shark. The first one was caught in Japan in 1898 and was so different from everything else that they had to create an entire family just for it. It swims slowly, has flabby, pinkish skin, and a long, flattened snout full of electric sensors that detect the heartbeat of any animal nearby. With its mouth closed, the jaw stays hidden under its eyes, and it looks like an ordinary shark. Nobody understood what that snout was for. In 2016, Kazuhiro Nakaya and his team analyzed footage from the Japanese broadcaster NHK that showed 2 goblin sharks capturing prey 5 times. The jaw does not open. It shoots out from the face at up to about 10 feet per second, extending nearly 10% of the body's length. It is the fastest jaw projection ever measured in any fish. The researchers named it slingshot feeding. It even opens and closes its mouth as it retracts, and nobody knows why. Number 14, the chimera. It is a distant cousin of the sharks and has existed on the planet even longer than they have. It has no scales and no rows of replaceable teeth, only plates of dentine for crushing shells on the bottom. The adult male has a jointed club of cartilage on its forehead, called a tenaculum, which is tucked into a slot behind the eyes and rises during mating to grip the female's fin. In 2025, a study in the journal PNAS confirmed it. That club is covered in real teeth. Number 15, the tripod fish. It stands upright on the mud of the seafloor, propped on 3 stilts, its 2 pelvic fins, and an extension of its tail. These stilts reach about 3 feet, 3 times the length of its body, and stiffen when it lands because the animal pumps fluid into them. It is functionally blind and stands facing into the current, waiting. Its pectoral fins work like touch antennas, and it is a hermaphrodite. If it cannot find a partner, it fertilizes itself. Number 16, the pelican eel. It lives between about 5,000 and 10,000 feet and reaches nearly 3 feet in length, almost all of it thin tail. What is strange about it is its mouth, a giant hinged pouch far larger than the rest of its body, that inflates in an instant like a soap bubble. The throat is a short tube that leads straight to an elastic stomach, and the body is so fragile that specimens arrive at the surface destroyed. Its teeth are tiny and almost useless. In September of 2018, the crew of the ship Nautilus filmed one near Hawaii. The animal inflated its entire head in front of the robot, turned into a black balloon the size of a ball, and deflated again in seconds before swimming off. The scientists watching started shouting. To this day, nobody is sure whether that was hunting, defense, or a threat. It feeds mainly on small crustaceans, which means the bucket-sized mouth may just be a backup plan. Number 17, the viperfish. It is about 12 inches long, with teeth so long they do not fit inside its own mouth. They curve backward and end up near its eyes, on the outside of its face, and the mouth never fully closes. The first ray of its dorsal fin is stretched out and has a glowing organ on the tip, which it arches over its head and dangles in front of its own mouth as a lure. When something comes close, the teeth snap shut, forming a cage. Its skull is jointed to its spine and tilts upward, opening the mouth at an angle no ordinary fish can reach. This lets it swallow prey up to 63% of its own length. The first vertebra, right behind the head, works as a shock absorber at the moment of the strike. It lives between about 600 and 3,300 feet, rises at night to feed, and eats rarely. Each meal has to last months. It is an animal built entirely around the idea of not missing. Number 18, the frilled shark. It has the body of an eel, nearly 6.5 feet long, and the head of a lizard with a blunt snout and 300 teeth arranged in 25 rows inside its mouth. Each tooth has 3 points turned backward, forming almost 1,000 hooks that prey cannot back out of. The name comes from its 6 gill slits with frilled edges, the first pair of which meets at the throat. When it shows up near the surface, it is almost always sick or dying. Studies of the species' embryos by Japanese researchers estimated the female's gestation at 3.5 years. If that number is right, it is the longest pregnancy of any vertebrate on the planet. An African elephant carries its calf for 22 months. The embryos grow between about 0.4 and 0.7 inches per month inside the mother, feeding on their own yolk sac, and are born fully formed at about 16 to 24 inches. The litter usually has fewer than 12 pups. Number 19, the giant isopod. It looks like a 16-inch pillbug and walks the abyssal floor-scavenging corpses. It was described in 1879 by Alphonse Milne Edwards from a specimen out of the Gulf of Mexico, and his colleagues thought such a thing could not exist. On the seafloor, food keeps no schedule. A whale falls, a large fish dies, and months or even years can pass between one event and the next. When food does appear, it eats until its body visibly swells. On September 9th, 2007, one of them arrived at the Toba Aquarium in Japan, brought over from the Gulf of Mexico. They recorded it as number 1, and it ate normally for more than a year, with no problem at all. On January 2nd, 2009, it swallowed about 2 ounces of horse mackerel in 5 minutes and never accepted anything again. The keeper, Takaya Moritaki, tried everything: squid, sardine, fresh fish, mackerel. The animal would even rub its face on the food and walk away without eating, active and healthy. The Japanese press began following the feeding attempts. Reporters would go to the aquarium to watch Moritaki offer mackerel to the animal, hoping this would be the time it worked, and it refused in front of everyone, month after month. On February 14th, 2014, Moritaki lowered the bait, and number 1 did not even fake interest. It was dead. It had gone 5 years and 43 days without eating anything, probably the longest fast ever observed in an animal outside of hibernation. Number 20. The Greenland shark. It crosses the Arctic at about the speed of someone walking through snow. It reaches about 18 feet and is one of the largest carnivorous sharks that exist, but it grows only about half an inch a year. Its scientific name translates to small-headed sleeper. Whole polar bears, reindeer, and moose have been found inside its stomach. The usual method of counting rings in the vertebrae does not work on it because the vertebrae are too soft. In 2016, a Danish team led by Julius Nielsen solved the problem another way. The core of the eye's lens forms before birth and is never replaced, so it works like a time capsule. They radiocarbon dated the eyes of 28 females. The largest, at about 16.5 feet, came back at 392 years old, within a possible range of 272 to 512. It is the longest-lived vertebrate ever recorded, and the female does not even reach sexual maturity until around 150 years old. There is one detail that almost every adult of the species carries with it. A copepod called Omatocoita elongata anchors itself to the shark's cornea and hangs off the eye like a rag, clouding its vision until it is nearly completely blind. The animal goes on hunting as usual. Its flesh is toxic and has to be fermented for months before it becomes food in Iceland. The one that was dated at 392 years old was already alive, blind, and swimming slowly when Isaac Newton was writing the Principia. Number 21. The coelacanth. On December 22, 1938, Captain Hendrik Goosen pulled in his net at the mouth of the Chalumna River in South Africa and brought up a bluish fish nearly 5 feet long, covered in hard scales, with 4 fleshy fins that looked like short legs. He tipped off Marjorie Courtney Latimer, the curator of the East London Museum, who had an arrangement with local fishermen to see anything unusual. Nobody at the museum knew what it was. Marjorie sketched the fish and mailed a letter to the ichthyologist J.L.B. Smith. Smith did not read it until January 3rd and recognized it instantly. It was a coelacanth, a group science had assumed extinct for more than 65 million years, known only from fossils. It took him until February to reach East London and see the animal with his own eyes. He named it Latimeria chalumnae, after Marjorie and the river. A one-day exhibition of the specimen drew a crowd into the city. Smith spent the following years obsessed because the carcass had lost its soft parts, and he could not produce a complete description of the species. It took 14 years for a second intact specimen to turn up. In 1997, a second living species was found in Indonesia, on the other side of the world. The fish that spent 65 million years not existing in science had, the whole time, been getting caught and sold in fish markets by people who never thought it was strange. Number 22. The Mariana snailfish. It looks far too fragile to exist where it does. It is about 4 inches long, pinkish and translucent with no scales at all, and its body looks like an oversized tadpole. It has no rigid bone, its skeleton is weak and partly cartilaginous, and it has no swim bladder because any pocket of gas would implode at that pressure. Its buoyancy comes from gelatinous tissue full of water. Nothing about it looks like survival equipment. It solves the pressure problem with chemistry. Its body accumulates a substance called trimethylamine oxide, which stabilizes proteins and cell membranes and keeps the pressure from deforming them. The concentration rises the deeper a species lives, but there is a ceiling. Above a certain concentration, the cell stops working. The calculations point to no fish being able to live below roughly 27,000 feet. That is the chemical limit of life with a backbone. On August 15, 2022, a baited camera from Alan Jamison's team filmed a juvenile snailfish at about 27,300 feet in the Izu Ogasawara Trench, off Japan. It is the deepest fish ever seen in history. 5 days later, they caught 2 specimens at about 26,300 feet in the Japan Trench, the only fish ever collected below 5 miles. All of them eat amphipods, the same ones that already have plastic inside them. The deepest fish on the planet eats the creature we contaminated. Number 23. Osedax, the bone-eating worm. A whale dies and sinks to the abyssal floor. Within a few hours, the scavengers arrive, and within a few months, they strip away all the flesh, and what is left is the skeleton lying in the mud, about 10,000 feet down. That is when the skeleton starts being colonized by something that should not work at all. A worm with no mouth, no eyes, no stomach, and no intestine. And that lives, all the same, on eating bone. This is the Osedax. In Latin, it means bone devourer. The female drives green branching roots into the bone and secretes acid, dissolving the mineral structure to reach the collagen inside. Bacteria housed in those roots do the digesting for her. All that pokes out of the bone is a red tuft of plumes, which works as a gill. The rest of the animal is inside the whale. And then there are the males. They never grow up. They stay frozen in the larval stage, microscopic, and live by the dozen inside the gelatinous tube of a single female, clustered around her oviduct. They do not eat bone and do nothing but produce sperm for the rest of their lives. The first two species described diverged from each other about 42 million years ago, which means whales have been falling to the seafloor for far longer than we assumed until now. Number 24, the supergiant amphipod. An amphipod is a crustacean, a distant relative of the shrimp that exists in every ocean in the world and is normally only a few millimeters long. In the trench, it becomes enormous. The specimens of Alicella gigantea collected in the Kermadec Trench between about 20,000 and 23,000 feet, measured from about 4 inches to 11 inches. 11 inches. A shrimp the size of a forearm, in the deepest, most food-poor place on the planet. Nobody can quite explain why this happens. They call it abyssal gigantism, and the hypotheses split between energy conservation, scarcity of predators, and pressure tolerance. A 2025 study estimated that Alicella gigantea may occupy more than half of the world's oceans, and even so, it is seen so rarely that for decades the impression was that it was extremely rare. The animal is not rare. The place where it lives is simply too big to be searched through. In 2014, an expedition collected amphipods with traps between about 19,700 and 22,800 feet in the Mariana Trench. It was a new species. The doctoral student Johanna Weston examined 4 specimens and found a microfiber inside one of them, polyethylene terephthalate, the plastic in water bottles, and gym clothes. Alan Jamison's team named the species Eurythanes plasticus. A species discovered more than 4 miles deep was already born contaminated and got its name because of it. Number 25. The mystery mollusk. In February of 2000, the robot Tiburon filmed something at about 8,600 feet in Monterey Bay that nobody could place in any group. It has an enormous gelatinous hood in front, which closes over prey like a carnivorous plant, and a flattened tail with fingers along the edges. It took more than 20 years and 157 sightings before the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute published the description. In 2024, it is a sea slug, the first one that spends its life swimming in total darkness. Number 26, Duobrachium sparksei. On April 10th, 2015, a robot from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration filmed 3 gelatinous creatures at about 12,800 feet near Puerto Rico. They had 2 thick, cone-shaped arms coming off the body and looked like a pair of pants floating upside down. Nobody collected any of them. In 2020, Mike Ford and Alan Collins formally described the species using only the video as the type material. This is a species with a scientific name, but not a single specimen in any museum in the world. Everything we know comes from that recording. Number 27, the giant tubeworm. In 1977, an expedition descended into the Galapagos Rift and found water above 570 degrees Fahrenheit gushing from cracks in the basalt, in absolute darkness, about 8,200 feet down. Around it was an entire ecosystem, dense, full of large animals. It made no sense at all because every known food chain up to that point began with the sun. And the owner of the place was a worm more than 6 feet long, living inside a hard, white tube of chitin. The adult Riftia has no mouth, no intestine, and no anus, nothing. In place of a digestive system, it has an organ called a trophosome, packed with bacteria of a single species, and it is those bacteria that manufacture all of its food from the sulfur that seeps out of the Earth's crust. It is born with a temporary mouth, the bacteria enter through it, and then the mouth disappears, never to return. From that point on, it never eats anything on its own for the rest of its life. All that pokes out of the tube is a red plume, which absorbs everything the bacteria need and vanishes back inside if a predator passes by. Its hemoglobin is unlike any other. It carries oxygen and hydrogen sulfide at the same time. without the sulfide poisoning the animal itself. The cells of the riftia multiply at a rate comparable to that of cancer cells, and it grows up to about 33 inches per year. It is the fastest growth ever measured in any marine invertebrate. Number 29, the Casper octopus. In February of 2016, an American robot filmed a white, translucent octopus at about 14,100 feet near Necker Island in Hawaii. It was about 4 inches long, had none of the ear flaps of the Dumbo octopuses, and belonged to no genus science had ever described. The internet named it Casper within days. 10 years later, it still has no scientific name, because nobody has managed to collect a specimen to make the formal description of the species. In December of 2016, a German and American team published what they had learned by observing Casper and 28 similar octopuses in the Pacific. The female lays her eggs on the stalk of a dead sponge. The sponge only grows if it is attached to a manganese nodule, a dark stone full of metal that takes millions of years to form on the seafloor. No nodule, no sponge, and no sponge means nowhere to lay eggs. And nodules are exactly what deep sea mining wants to pull out of there. Number 30, the bloody belly comb jelly. It has a dark red stomach and the rest of its body is transparent. It is not decoration. At the depth where it lives, red light does not reach, so anything red appears black and vanishes into the background. And there is the reason: it eats bioluminescent prey, animals that keep glowing after being swallowed. The red stomach works as an opaque bag. Without it, it would turn into a walking flashlight advertising its own position. Number 31, the firefly squid. It is about 3 inches long and lives between about 650 and 1,300 feet in Japan. Its entire body is covered in photophores, organs that produce blue light. The ones on its belly serve a specific trick. It measures the brightness coming from above and adjusts its own glow to match it exactly. Seen from below, the body loses its silhouette. It vanishes. It is called counter-illumination, turning on a light of your own in order to disappear inside another light. Every spring, millions of them rise into Toyama Bay to spawn, and the whole coastline lights up blue. Tourists travel to see it, and the region has become a protected natural monument of Japan. Except the spectacle is their funeral. The female releases her eggs and dies right afterward, closing a life cycle of exactly 1 year. Nearly all the squid caught during the season are females carrying eggs. The glow that lights up the entire bay is the last thing they ever do. Number 32, the blobfish. In 2013, it was voted the ugliest animal in the world by public vote, with 795 votes in a campaign meant to draw attention to the species nobody finds beautiful. The photo that went around the planet shows a melted pink blob with a sad face. Except that is not the fish. It is the corpse of a fish destroyed by the decompression of a trawl net. At about 4,000 feet, where it lives, that gelatinous body looks like a normal fish. Number 33, the Tindaria clam. In 1975, Carl Turakian and a team from Yale used radioisotope dating on a population collected at about 12,500 feet in the Atlantic. The species is called Tindaria callistiformis, and the largest specimen was about 1/3 of an inch long. Less than half an inch. The shell showed about 100 regular growth bands, and the dating matched. That 1/3 of an inch animal was about 100 years old. It spent an entire century eating mud to reach the size of a fingernail. Number 34, the Dumbo octopus. It has 2 flaps on top of its head, resembling ears, which it beats to swim instead of using a jet of water like other octopuses. Its mantle is soft and gelatinous, with nothing rigid the pressure can crush. In April of 2019, a bottom camera filmed one of them searching for food at about 22,800 feet in the Java Trench. The previous record for any cephalopod was about 16,900 feet, taken from a black and white photo 50 years earlier. Number 35, the coffinfish. It walks along the bottom instead of swimming propped on its fins, and has a short lure on its forehead. In 2019, Stacy Farina and Nicholas Long discovered something in robot footage from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that nobody had noticed. The animal fills its gill chambers with water and holds it. It does not exhale. It stays like that for anywhere from 26 seconds to 4 minutes, inflated by up to 30% of its volume, and then lets go. It is the only known fish that holds its breath, and it does it to save energy. Number 36, the headless chicken monster. Its genus is called Enypniastes, which in Greek means dreamer. It is a sea cucumber that swims, something almost no sea cucumber on the planet does, propelled by a cape-shaped membrane that it opens and closes in the water. Its body is translucent red, and you can see all of its organs inside. In October of 2018, an Australian camera filmed one near Antarctica. far from the Gulf of Mexico, where it was known. Number 37, the glass octopus. It is practically invisible in the water. Its entire body is gelatinous and colorless, and the only opaque things about it are its cylindrical eyes, its optic nerve, and its digestive tube. It lives between about 2,000 and 3,000 feet and reaches about 18 inches. For nearly a century, everything science knew about it came from pieces found in the stomachs of predators. In 2021, an expedition from the Schmidt Ocean Institute filmed 2 live ones near the Phoenix Islands in the Pacific. Number 38, the sea pig. It is a sea cucumber about 2 to 6 inches long that walks across the abyssal mud propped on tube feet inflated with water, which work like fat, stiff hydraulic little legs. It is pinkish, translucent, and always walks against the current, never at random. It is one of the most abundant animals on the ocean floor. In robot footage, the ground sometimes looks like a pink carpet as far as the robot's light can reach into the dark. There is something about them that the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute examined in about 2,600 individuals and could not explain. Nearly a quarter were carrying a crab along with them. Always juvenile king crabs, a little over half an inch across, clinging to their backs or hidden under their bellies. In rocky areas, these juveniles hide among corals. On the abyssal mud, the sea pig is the only thing more than an inch tall. The only shelter available in the desert is another animal. Number 39, Abyssobrachula galathii. In 1970, a trawl net from the ship Pillsbury came up from the Puerto Rico Trench with a yellowish, soft fish. The recorded depth was about 27,500 feet, and for decades, that stood as the deepest fish ever captured in the history of biology. The species was described in 1977 by the Dane Jørgen Nielsen. The problem is that the net did not close. It stayed open on the way down and on the way up, and the species is common between about 10,000 and 20,000 feet. Number 40, the scaly foot snail. It lives at more than about 7,900 feet deep in the Indian Ocean, pressed up against hydrothermal vents that gush water above 660 degrees Fahrenheit. Its foot is covered in hundreds of hard, overlapping scales looking like miniature medieval armor. Those scales, and the outer layer of the shell, are mineralized with iron sulfide. It is the only known animal on the planet that builds its own skeleton using metal. The minerals it uses are pyrite and greigite, and greigite is magnetic, so the snail sticks to a magnet. A mollusk about 1.5 inches long that responds to a magnetic field as if it were a workbench tool. It also has, in proportion to its body, the largest heart of any animal in the kingdom. About 4% of its volume is heart alone, which serves to pump enough oxygen for the internal bacteria that manufacture its food from the sulfur of the vent. It exists only in 3 hydrothermal vent fields in the Indian Ocean, occupying a combined area of less than about 0.01 square miles. Without the vent, it does not eat and does not survive. In 2019, it became the first hydrothermal vent endemic species to enter the IUCN Red List, and the first on the planet to be classified as threatened because of deep sea mining. 2 of the 3 fields where it exists already have exploration licenses granted to companies. Number 41, the piglet squid. It is less than 4 inches long and swims upside down all the time. What looks like a pig's snout is the siphon, the tube it uses to breathe and to propel itself like a jet pump. Its tentacles hang over its eyes, looking like a tuft of hair. Its transparent body is a balloon full of ammonia, and that is how it controls its buoyancy. In 2019, the ship Nautilus filmed one at about 4,500 feet near Palmyra Atoll.